So we are back a week later. We finally got the head back from the head shop, and it is time to put this thing back together. We do need to do a little bit more taking apart since we ended up breaking the timing belt. We do have the replacements for those, but I want to get this on there first because we're going to need this on there regardless to retime the car. So let's get started. Let's put this head back on. We'll give you guys some cool B-roll shots of the actual head, and then we'll get straight to it. Alrighty, so here we are actually going to go ahead and clean the actual block, meaning the piston rings from any debris that are on them, any of the old gasket surface. We're going to take a plastic razor blade, scratch the surface up to make sure none of that old gasket material is there so the new one seals properly. And then we're going to grab a vacuum, get all that extra debris that fell inside of the pistons, make sure everything is nice and clean. That way whenever we put the head gasket on there, it all seals well and good. That way we don't have to redo this. And boom, that right there is the head gasket. Pretty easy to line everything up. Just make sure the holes aren't blocked by any means. And the head goes right on top of that. Make sure to move everything out of the way, that way nothing gets pinched under it, because that can damage the actual head and or the block. Should seat pretty snugly without any real resistance. Now we're going to grab all the head bolts, put them into each of the holes. Make sure they're all hand tight, that way we can torque them properly and get the right sequence. That way it is evenly distributed amongst the head gasket. Okay, so really quickly I'm going to explain to you guys what the difference between a normal ratchet and a torque wrench is. This is your normal ratchet. As you can see, there's nothing really special about this one except that it's a flex head. Flex head just basically means that I can twist this at any angle and it wouldn't really affect it. I could use it from any angle, basically made for smaller areas. This is what you saw me use. This is a torque wrench. This is something you normally use, or at least most mechanics use, only in special occasions, but you realistically should use it for most of your car. Most of your car does have a torque spec and a torque yield. In a similar sense, most of your bolts do as well. With head bolts, you don't want to reuse them because they can break, because they are more than likely one-time use unless you get aftermarket ones from like ARP. Basically what these mean is that the bolt only wants to stretch a certain amount. This number right here correlates in foot-pounds or pound-feet, and on the other side you have Newton meters, depending on where in the world you are or the specification chart that you are using. This is only really good if you are using pound-feet or foot-pounds, whichever one you want to use. And basically, you're going to go until it clicks. There are some that I'll show you in a little bit that do a little bit of a different thing. But these ones click, and that's as far as you want the bolt to go. Make sure to follow your specification for that. The other form of torque wrench is one of these. This is a fully electric one. These are really nice whenever you're doing bigger projects like a motor, or if you're rebuilding a whole car and really want everything to be perfect. This is more what you're going to get, but this is mainly for mechanics. Everything else you should be able to use for a lot cheaper. This one cost me about $600, but these are really cool because it has pound-feet, inch-pounds, Newton meters, and then it also has an angle gauge. Even though you guys saw me use the normal ratchet for the angle, that's because we were able to mark it and get an approximate amount. But whenever you're doing warranty work for somebody else, you want to be as accurate as possible, meaning you want one of these. There is a different kind of angle meter. And it basically is like this, but it has a little dial right here that kind of tells you how far you're going with the angle. But these are torque wrenches. They are really useful whenever you're trying to make something really accurately. So be sure to use the proper tools when you need them. I'm not responsible for your guys' work. That's on you.
Now, I know what you guys are thinking. This looks pretty easy as it is, but there is a very specific set of steps that you have to follow. First step is you gotta torque every single one in a certain sequence. You gotta torque all the bolts to 55 foot-pounds and then loosen every single one of them in the exact same order. After loosening up all of the bolts, now we move on to the harder steps, which is we're going to do 2 steps of 90-degree angles, meaning you're going to do 90-degree on every single bolt, and then you're going to redo another 90, and that should be the proper torque. Now we just need to install the intake manifold into the back of the engine. Boom, that simple. Now after cleaning all of the gasket surfaces, we are going to apply some RTV or gasket maker. That way we are able to make our own gaskets, because these surfaces do not actually come with gaskets, so we do have to make our own. But that's not a problem. As you guys can see, you just add a good dollop of RTV. Make sure everything is cleaned, and then all you're going to do is just press it down and tighten all the bolts. That simple. Now we need to finish assembling the head. We're going to take off that valve cover. First thing we're going to do is install one of the rocker arms. This one, of course, opens up the intake valves. And then we're going to install the exhaust rocker for the exhaust valves. Make sure everything is seated correctly, and then after that we are going to start hand tightening these, of course. That way we don't cross thread any bolts. We're going to also install these little gaskets. They basically protect the spark plugs from getting any oil inside of them. Now we're going to torque each of the rocker bolts. We're going to start from the inside and work our way out. That way the pressure is pushed outwards. I did do all of them, but we are running a little bit extra on time. I'm going to install the exhaust manifold. And then right after that, we're going to seal this up nice and pretty like by installing the valve cover with a brand new gasket on it. Don't you worry, guys. We're trying to do this as best as we can. Now we did put the bolts in. I forgot to record that, but that's okay. It did end up getting pretty late in the day. Now we're just going to install the spark plugs for today. And unfortunately, that's all I got for you guys this week. We do have more footage, but we are going to postpone that for the second episode of this, or a two-part episode of this. That way you guys come back and see how it's timed. That one's a little more detail-oriented, but thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.